so the Springfield Board is in session. We'd like to welcome everybody here.
That's probably why.
And we'll convene the Rainbow Board as well. And I think we probably ought to take roll both. And then Lou has some housekeeping. Okay, and then we can do introductions around the table. That's all right.
Yeah, so we'll go around, just introduce who you are. So Terry, I'm Dave Willis, I'm board chair.
Terry Dillon, board vice chair, sub.
I'm Jim McLaughlin. I don't know what board member number I am now, but I'm
Sub first.
I didn't hear that. I have nothing to do with the sub board.
Bruce Members, I'm the newest sub member, came on in October.
John DeWinter, sub board since I think 2015.
Ryan Thomas, sub board since August of 2024. That's it for the.
That's the sub board. Oh, you want me to, Jeff Nelson, General Manager of Springfield Utility Board.
Matt Dahlstrom, Legal Counsel.
Greg Miller, Water Division Director, sub.
All right. And Doug Keeler, Rainbow Board President for longer than anyone cares to remember.
Marla Casley, I'm the Rainbow Board Vice President, been a board member since 2009.
Jim McLaughlin, Rainbow Board member since probably, I don't know, it's been quite a while, but past president a couple terms ago, and right now I just here.
Good evening, everyone. Lou Alaco, Rainbow Water District Board member. I have been on the board since 2010, I think, going on 15 years. Anyway.
Mindy Kephart, newest board member, been on since 2023.
Eric Carlson, Assistant Superintendent.
Ross Williamson, Rainbow General Counsel.
Jamie Porter, Rainbow Superintendent.
Oh, the most important people in the room? My name is Jody Sanders. I'm the Rainbow Office Manager. I'm Cindy Flaherty, the Executive Assistant.
So just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Many of you have been in this room. Welcome to the Springfield Justice Center. This is AKA the Emergency Operations Center room. We got to stop meeting like this right before ICE events, you know. But at any rate, just some housekeeping things. Please silence your cell phones during the meeting. The meeting is recorded, so we can type up some really great meeting minutes. Restrooms just out this door and to your right, ladies' room, men's room. The elevators are open and they will remain open to the conclusion of the meeting. Please don't go out this door. You'll set an alarm off if you don't have a key. And all the food is here, and that's all I have.
Great, so we are now going to turn off the recording and we're gonna eat. And then we'll reconvene at 6 o'clock. We'll start right at 6 o'clock. Okay, Anjay. Doug and I have to say, other than we're just really glad that everybody's here. We were commenting on how different it was from last year, like Doug and the agenda. And appreciate the work and truly the heavy lifting that he did and Rainbow did last year. And in terms of the presentations. So turn the time over to you, Amy. Is this, you ready? Good. Okay.
Before we do the next thing, I just want to call out Cindy and just applaud her for all the heavy lifting, getting all this great food for all of us tonight. So thank you, Cindy.
I need help. The site that is one. This is not.
Yeah. She can take the keyboard up there. Okay. Take it down now.
Good evening. Thank you for coming again. It's good for us to gather like this. Get to know each other a little bit better. And
So again, my name is Jamie Porter. I've been superintendent of Rainbow since July of 2010, so almost 15 years now. So Southern Rainbow shares some important history, and I want to take a few minutes to remember where Rainbow came from, as it helps explain Springfield's water system and how it has developed. So we need to actually change to my slides. So Rainbow's story began 75 years ago. And for those of you who were here last year, some of this may sound familiar, so we didn't reinvent the history. We're just repeating ourselves a bit. But 75 years ago, a group of citizens banded together to call for a Lane County election, and they formed 2 water districts to supply water to the growing community. It was August 1949. The end of World War II was a very recent memory, and people who were later to be known as baby boomers were happy to leave the war years behind, build houses, and settle down. The timber industry took off to supply lumber for construction. Weyerhaeuser opened a new mill in Springfield, bringing hundreds of jobs and more people to the area. Springfield's population nearly tripled between 1940 and 1950. The Rainbow Water District was incorporated as a special district August 22, 1949. So this last fall, we just celebrated our 75th anniversary, and congratulations on SUB celebrating yours. It was formed to provide water service to approximately 300 customers in North Springfield. The McKenzie Highway Water District was formed by voters in 50 to serve East Springfield, present-day Thurston. The 2 water districts shared an attorney, and they shared a manager, and system construction began in 1950 under the direction of the original superintendent, Jay Hicks. This original work consisted of approximately 40,000 feet of pipeline and was served by a metered connection from eWeb. In this photo, Jay is turning on the master meter, the original Rainbow 5th Street intertie. During those first few years, there was a flurry of construction and planning for the new system. Since water was provided by eWeb and the district had no source water or reservoir storage of our own, all that was required was to install distribution mains and service connections to deliver water to our customers. Some time passed, and in 1956, the Rainbow and McKenzie Highway Water Districts began drilling for water along the south bank of the McKenzie River, north of the Weyerhaeuser paper mill site in Springfield. This was a defining moment for the districts. After nearly 6 years of operation, the prospect of leaving eWeb and owning and managing their own water source was at hand. In addition to the well field, a 24-inch transmission main and a control house were built along 42nd Street. Back then, I guess it was High Banks Road. By 1957, Rainbow had an office and control facility. Board meetings could now be moved out of the superintendent's home. Rainbow still uses the original superintendent's metal desk in the photo on the right. Rainbow secured a site for a 1 million gallon concrete reservoir on top of Kelly Butte near downtown. This was constructed and placed in operation in 1959. The present day Kelly Butte Reservoir is shown here in color, sitting adjacent to Willamette Lane's Hilltop Park. The older elevated tank was erected by Pacific Power and Light in the 40s, and SUB took this down in the early 90s, I understand, after Kelly Butte Pump Station was constructed. By 1959, the North System, operated by Rainbow, had 1 well field and 1 reservoir. Water was and still is pumped from the wells directly into the reservoirs. The weight of the water provides around 90 to 100 pounds PSI of system pressure, which is really good for pushing water out of fire hydrants. In 1960, the Springfield Utility Board purchased McKenzie Highway Water District, and that gave them half ownership of the Weyerhaeuser well field, forming the SUB Rainbow partnership that we still have carried forward to this day. The Springfield area had 3 water utilities. Rainbow served the north, SUB served the east, and Pacific Power and Light served the west, the original downtown area. With increasing growth and extreme weather conditions, Rainbow began feeling the strain in 1962. The newest well at the Weyerhaeuser well field was not yet in operation, and it was back to eWeb for up to 3 million gallons a day of emergency water through the original metered connection to get us through the summer months. It was clear by 1963 the possibility of additional water sources should be explored. And by the following year, the board had authorized the superintendent to negotiate the purchase of additional property for wells along the McKenzie north of Hayden Bridge Road. and for a storage tank at the top of Moe Hill, the other high spot in North Springfield. Test wells drilled in the location along the river promised significant high-quality groundwater. Rainbow went back to the voters in '64 with a bond measure to finance the planned well field and reservoir improvements. The voters turned it down by a small margin, dashing the district's hope for the project. But after an effective customer information campaign, the voters approved the measure the following year. The project was underway. In 1965, a bid was awarded for the construction of a new 2 million gallon water reservoir on Moe Hill. And the expansion, it's also Vitus Butte, the expansion of the district office and control house. Once again, Rainbow purchased water from EWEB while these new sources were being added. This reservoir was later replaced in 1996 to provide twice the capacity. In the 70s, 2 wells were drilled along Interstate 5. 1 well was drilled near 7th and Q Street to provide additional source capacity. And these pictures give an example of a well, electrical panel, the associated piping, and 3 of our wells are covered by removable metal buildings. So you can see that example at Q Street. Greg will share more details of SUB's history in the next presentation, but this map from the 1971 Register Guard article shows the condition of the 3 different water systems at that time. 1971 was when an intergovernmental agreement between SUB, Rainbow, and the city was adopted, defining service boundaries and procedures for transferring customers upon annexation. Due to the perception that annexations would occur rapidly, the 1971 IGA first considered a transfer of operations from Rainbow to SUB based on the number of customers in the city limits. There was no specific date for the agreement, but it was assumed that Rainbow would shrink in size. An attitude of Rainbow will go away prevailed for several decades after that. By 1975, SUB bought PP&L's facilities in West Springfield, the area shown in red. More than doubling their water customers, Rainbow continued to supply North Springfield, serving both the county residents on the edges of the city as well as some city customers through contractual agreements. In the 1980s, we worked with SUB to participate in community activities like this 1983 Springfest parade. We actively supported the city's growth and economic development, such as meeting this trade delegation from Japan to discuss water availability for industry. In 1981, a new intergovernmental agreement between SUB and Rainbow was adopted to further define this transition from Rainbow when the operation of the district appeared to not be in the public interest. The SUB and Rainbow boards were tasked with meeting at least twice a year to discuss and review programs and capital improvement plans. The agreement was to continue until such time that SUB and Rainbow mutually agreed to transfer Rainbow operations to SUB. Any transfer of operations would require at least 5 years' notice. In 1992, the IGA between SUB and Rainbow was updated again. Rainbow was no longer serving city customers directly, but a program was developed whereby Rainbow sold water to SUB at a wholesale cost to allow SUB to serve the city customers previously served by Rainbow. This IGA went into more detail on assets and joint operations, describing how to coordinate water quality, system maintenance and repairs, and what to do with personnel. Again, there was no expiration date for this agreement, and this has guided our 2 utilities for 33 years now. 1995, an urban services agreement between SUB, Rainbow, and the city was adopted to comply with state law and show how the water utilities were coordinating the provision of services within the UGB. It was agreed Rainbow would continue as the interim provider for customers within its service area boundary, while SUB would plan to serve as the future provider for the entire UGB. The city of Springfield was recognized as responsible for land use planning. Both utilities jointly develop and maintain a master plan and, again, continue to meet and coordinate activities. In the 2010s, Rainbow had a partial failure of our chase well number 4. We attempted to replace that lost water by drilling a chase well number 5, but it was not as much of a producer. When it was determined that chlorine alone was insufficient treatment for chase well number 2, and we knew we could not afford to lose any more capacity at this well field, the board elected to invest in a treatment plant to provide the additional filtration required. So this was around 2014 and 15. At this time, we also included a corrosion control facility to raise the pH of the water and help Sub meet the higher standards required of them due to their larger population. My goal in reviewing this history of Rainbow and our part of the North System is just to help everybody understand why the water system formed as 3 separate zones. Sub is working on pipelines that will better connect these zones and allow the operation as one large water system in the future, but that's not how things started. Rainbow continues to operate and function in the North System as we always have. Our water systems are connected. Water from Rainbow wells flows through Rainbow and Sub pipes in North Springfield, serving areas from West Centennial to Gateway Mall. As Sub works to plan for Springfield's growth in the future, Rainbow is actively working with your staff to meet future water needs. In the North System, there is no single point of a connection that separates Rainbow neighborhoods from Sub neighborhoods. And our areas of connection change every time there's an annexation or a boundary adjustment. Sub and Rainbow customers are interspersed, as shown in this example neighborhood south of Centennial Boulevard. Sub piping is in blue, Rainbow piping is in magenta. Water can flow from one Rainbow main to a Sub neighborhood or from a Sub main to a Rainbow neighborhood. And this division is a function of historical annexations and development. Rainbow's water in the North System has supplied both Rainbow customers and Sub customers due to Rainbow being able to develop and sell our surplus water to Sub historically. Both Sub and Rainbow customers are served by Sub Electric. So both utilities end up serving many of the same customers. So Rainbow has recognized that our limited geographic position between the freeway, the river, and the city limits our growth opportunities. We experience very limited growth as larger developments desire higher densities that cannot be supported by septic, and this necessitates annexation and connection to city sewer. For the last 30 years, Rainbow's customer base has remained relatively flat. We've experienced a small loss of customers, mostly due to septic system failures, but then we've gained a few customers due to infills or ADUs with a large lot splitting into 2 smaller ones. Overall, we are 99% residential, and the increase in water demand we experience is essentially due to city development and the growth in Sub customers. Marcola Meadows is a good example. So all of those new homes are Sub customers, but at the moment it's relying on Rainbow's water until Sub has new sources online. Rainbow continues to supply our own customers and sell water to Sub to help them support the city under the wholesale contract. But we have been able to use our resources, and because we're not involved in a lot of construction inspections, we're not reviewing plans for new developments all the time. We instead have focused on being consultants to some of the smaller water systems around Springfield. And so we help operate and manage their systems for them with our spare time, so that's kind of how it's worked out. Working to support these gives us a foot in the door with the city and the county. And it's less than 10% of our business, but it is an important resource for emergency preparedness and just building those liaison connections. For the big picture, you can just see our water sources are in these 4 different locations in the northwest corner of Springfield. Weyerhaeuser Wellfield is jointly owned, 50% Sub, 50% Rainbow, the Wellfield on the right side. And just in summary, those are the resources, the assets that we're contributing to help serve Springfield in partnership with you. Greg's going to tell us all about all the new areas and some old fangled stuff.
Well, there's no question.
Exactly.
Are there any questions? Yeah, that's a good point. Get the meeting done. Down there early. Oh, thank you.
The grandson, big Jim's.
Thank you.
we have people here. Just want to hand that out. That'll help provide some context for a lot of the things Jamie was describing also, and that I'll be talking about, and how our systems are combined and spread out across Springfield. So. Jamie's a hard act to follow, so I'll do my best. I'm Greg Miller. I'm the Water Division Director with SUB. I've been with SUB for going on 34 years. I've been in this position for the last 8. Primarily, most of my background in SUB been in operations, and last 8 years or so as the director. Wanted to go back. I tried to condense this down. There's a lot there, and I feel like I don't want to ramble and get long-winded with it, but in order to tell SUB's story and kind of the evolution of the water system, we've got to go back quite a ways, and there's a lot over time that's happened in thinking about preparing this. And when you look at the expansions of our system and stuff, and it's not always driven by just development and increasing demand in the system. There's a lot of regulatory requirements that change over time, and different things occur that you have to respond to and plan for and invest in along the way that changes our planning and significant for both of us. And so trying to find the page down. Okay, so this is SUB today. Just currently in Springfield, we have 21,000, almost 22,000 service connections. We're producing, and these are some rough rounded numbers, 3 billion a day, about 10 million a day, or 3 billion a year, about 10 million gallons a day in customer average gallons per day, and about 26 million gallons a day at peak demands. Threw this in here just for kind of a history walk down memory lane, but found this looking through some of our old records and stuff, and just thought it was pretty cool. This is 4th and Main Street looking west.
Was that the ice storm, right?
And so if you drive down through there today, these buildings are all still there. That's lovely right there. I don't know exactly, but Washburn Cafe and Main Street Tavern and the markets and stuff are in that area there. This was kind of a cool photo that we stumbled across. I like the streetlights suspended over the intersection.
Yeah. Looks like.
Pretty cool.
Greg, did you say the year of that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that is circa 1911. Yeah. So to really tell SUB's story in the evolution of the water system, you got to go back and kind of tell a story how it evolved from public power in Springfield. So back in the 1930s, customers in Springfield, unhappy with high cost and unreliable service, Mountain States Power began lobbying for a charter amendment to create a public municipal utility. In 1949, after many years and multiple elections and recalls, voters passed an amendment authorizing Springfield's Common Council to acquire and operate a light and power system in Springfield. And Springfield, boy, this runny nose is going to be a problem through this. I apologize. Acquire an electric and light and power system, and Springfield Municipal Power was born. This signaled the beginning of a 25-year battle between the city's utility and Mountain States Power and their successor, Pacific Power and Light. I'm on the right points here. In September of 1950, Springfield Municipal Power hooked up its first customers, and in October of 1950, the City Council transferred responsibility for the utility to an independent board, the City of Springfield Utility Board, or SUB for short. So as we go through
Thank you, Lou. So as we go through this presentation, it'll jump ahead and focus on the story of the water department. But if anybody is interested in finding more about the history of the power system in Springfield, there is some interesting stuff on the website at that address. And there's some neat things there. There's a infographic video there that's really neat that kind of tells that story in more detail, but we'll get on to water. So the sub and rainbow water system is a product of 6 different water systems that have been acquired and merged over the years into the system that exists today. And these systems, this is just kind of includes the systems Mountain States Power, which later became Pacific Power and Light, Glenwood Water District, which serves the area west of the Willamette River, the original McKenzie Highway Water District that serves East Springfield, that was serving East Springfield, Willamette Water Company, which serves the area in Jasper Road, Douglas Gardens area, and Filbert Grove Water District that served the area South 2nd Street between Doris Ranch and the Willamette River, and Rainbow Water District serving customers in the North Springfield area. Today, the sub and rainbow systems are divided into the following 3 separate service areas. And this is a map you have in front of you. And I knew this was going to be a hard one to see from a distance, but it goes along with a lot of what Jamie presented also, as he was talking about how these systems are interconnected. And in the west system, the green area there is mainly it's the oldest part of the subsystem in downtown Springfield and Glenwood, located south of 105 and west of the railroad tracks near 28th Street. The east system is the area located to the east of 28th and extends out in Springfield out to 75th Street. And the north system, or the Rainbow Sub north system, is primarily located north of 105 and west of Kelly Boulevard. Each of these areas has a unique history, and the chronology of this presentation, like I was saying, focuses on the growth and development of the sources, but it's worth noting that other components of the system, like the transmission and storage, pumping, and other components, are all what brings these systems together and makes these systems what they are. And rather than jumping through chronologically by year and jumping from system to system to system, I chose to just take a system and talk about that and jump through it by years. Just to kind of help, we'll jump back and forth in time a little bit, but starting with the west system in 1906. I'm not super coordinated with the PowerPoint things. 1906, the first municipal water system in Springfield was franchised by the Springfield City Council. The owners of a steam-powered electric generation plant adjacent to the Springfield Mill Race along the southern edge of Springfield constructed a pumping plant next to the power plant and a distribution system in the downtown area. Reservoir storage was provided through a contract with the sawmill, which was Booth Kelly at the time, I believe, that provided fuel for the power plant from an 800,000 gallon reservoir that was on the hill behind the mill up on Willamette Heights. It was an open concrete reservoir that sat up on the hill above the mill. In 1936, due to the fact the industry developed along the mill race was causing the mill race water to become contaminated to the point that it was no longer suitable for drinking water, the owners of the water system constructed a new intake in the mill race east of South 28th Street and about a mile upstream from the steam plant. So if you were out there today, it would be down there kind of behind where Roseboro is, where the bike path crosses the South 28th Street now on the mill race. And a chlorination facility was constructed close by right there, near where our east side pump station is, just on the north side of the mill race. and a 16-inch transmission line was constructed to the steam plant. In 1950, the owners of the water and power systems, Pacific Power and Light, made a decision to stop direct use of the Springfield Mill Race as a source of drinking water and began the development of the Willamette well field. 6 wells were drilled in the late 50s, and a transmission pipeline was constructed in South 28th Street to transport the water to the distribution system. Chlorination continued to be at the South 28th Street location, and the site of the Willamette well field is the area that's in between, on South 28th Street, it would be between the Middle Fork of the Willamette River and Gory Creek, which is a stream that takes off of the mill race and travels east towards Quarry Hill and then flows back into the Middle Fork of the Willamette River. The floor in Gory Creek was controlled by a set of head gates at the mill race, and the original wells out there drilled were shallow wells that were drilled at about 30 feet deep. In 1953, recognizing that the wells did not produce adequate water to meet the demands, PP&L applied for a permit to pump 20 cubic feet a second water from the Middle Fork of the Willamette to a system of injection and recharge wells interspaced throughout the well field. As additional wells were drilled in the 50s and 60s, the recharge system was expanded to include both wells and channels meandering through the well field. The recharge channels were routed through the well field and water was pumped into them on a continuous basis to supplement the native groundwater in the well field. The excess flow of the recharge channel was directed to an old gravel extraction pit at the westerly end and then back into the river. The water level in the lake was controlled by a small structure at the west end, and some point PP&L we don't have data on it, but they placed a structure in Gory Creek near 28th Street, also as flow control into Gory Creek. The purpose of the flow control gates was to back water up into the channels flowing through the well field. So as you can imagine, they put dams on them, backed that water up into the channels and created that extra head on the well field to get that extra recharge into the aquifer. In 1975, Springfield voters overwhelmingly approved a $14 million bond issue that allowed SUB to buy PP&L's electric and water facilities in the Springfield area, doubling SUB's customer base overnight from 3,000 water customers to 7,750. There were 12 operating wells at Willamette Wellfield at that time. The recharge system of wells and channels were still in place and supplied by 2 pumps in the river pump station. In the 1980s, in response to increasing concerns over raw water quality, primarily due to turbidity, particulates in the water, the use of the Willamette recharge wells ceased, and all of the water pumped from the river pump station was directed into the recharge channel. Additional changes were made in the 80s and 90s, including flow structures on the main recharge channel and the lake outlet control structure and the Gory Creek control structure. Again, those improvements were made to further enhance that increased head on the well field to produce that recharge into the aquifer. In the 1990s, the groundwater at the Willamette well field was determined by the Oregon Health Authority to be groundwater under the direct influence of surface water, RWD wells, if you've heard that acronym, and SUB was required to provide additional treatment. In 2001, in response to that requirements, slow sand filters and ultraviolet light UV systems were constructed in the sub well field on sub property just east of the Willamette well field to address the WUDI requirements. And as part of this construction, the river pump station and intake piping were also replaced at the same time with new facilities. The suction lines from the river pump station into the Middle Fork Willamette were replaced with current screens that met the fish and fish requirements, NIMS requirements. In 2013, at the same site, corrosion control facility was constructed adjacent to the slow sand plant to provide pH control, pH adjustment for lead and copper rule issues. Just as Jamie spoke about the corrosion control warehouse room. So in it's kind of an extension of the west system is Glenwood. And so with the history of Glenwood is a small area to the west of Springfield, bounded by the Willamette River and Interstate 5. It was created in response to a devastating fire in 1941. The Glenwood Water District was formed to provide drinking water and fire protection to that area. In 1943, the water distribution system was constructed, and Glenwood Water negotiated an IGA with EWEB to provide water supply, a water distribution system, and maintenance and billing services for that area. As properties in Glenwood were annexed into the city of Eugene, they became EWEB customers, and EWEB expanded the distribution system to provide water to them. 2001, Glenwood moved from the city of Eugene's UGB to the city of Springfield's, and an IGA was negotiated between SUB and Glenwood, similar to the one between Glenwood and EWEB. A transfer was negotiated between SUB and EWEB of EWEB water distribution system assets within Springfield city limits in the Glenwood area. And in 2002, SUB extended a 24-inch transmission pipeline across the Willamette River under the bridge and began providing water supply to the Glenwood area. Moving over to the East System, the history of the East System tells a story of how SUB acquired water in its East System and how SUB and Rainbow came to have interconnected systems and the evolution of SUB's plans for development of the McKenzie River water source. In 1950, some of this will be a little bit of a repeat of what Jamie has presented, but in 1950, McKenzie Highway Water District was formed to construct and operate a municipal water system in the growing area of Springfield to the east of the PP&L system. In 1951, the distribution system was constructed and service began in November. A contract for wholesale water purchase was signed with Eugene Water and Electric Board, and a transmission pipeline was constructed from EWEB's water transmission pipeline to the McKenzie Highway system. About the same time as the McKenzie Highway Water District was formed to serve East Springfield, the Rainbow Water District was formed to serve the area north of the PP&L system and west of the McKenzie Highway system. Both systems purchased from EWEB at the same location. Both systems purchased water from EWEB at the same location. In 1956, the McKenzie Highway Water and Rainbow Water District signed the first of a series of intergovernmental agreements for jointly creating and operating Weyerhaeuser well field. In 1960, SUB acquired the assets of the McKenzie Highway Water District and assumed the joint operation and maintenance agreements with Rainbow Water District. And SUB began providing water to 300 customers in the East System. In 1965, as that area of Springfield started to grow east, additional water supply was needed, and the first well was drilled in what is now known as the Thurston Well Field, formerly known as the Fox Well Field, off North 66th Street, off Thurston Road, back behind where the old Grange is. Additional wells have been added to this field over years, and several additional wells have been planned for the future also. In 1982, SUB drilled the SP well near the west end of the system in the area of 28th and Olympic Street. If you can picture, it would be at the base of I-105 and just on the east side of 28th Street next to the railroad tracks. And in 1984, SUB drilled the Maya well, which is on the opposite side of 28th Street and on the north side of 105, located in Maya Park over off of Marcola Road. In the 1990s, pentachlorophenol contamination plume was detected in the groundwater on the Weyerhaeuser mill site, and a granular activated carbon treatment facility that never just flows off the tongue very good, but it was constructed to treat Weyerhaeuser wellfield water. And in 2020, a corrosion control facility was constructed for Waco water. And this picture, I like this picture here. It was a good example of a joint project by SUB and Rainbow. Not necessarily the GAC plant, but the corrosion control facility on the right. Those are SUB and Rainbow team members there. That facility was constructed almost 100% by our crews, and the building and the treatment system inside it. It was a really neat operation or project. In 2001, one of the Thurston wells, Thurston well number 2, was deemed woody under the influence of surface water by Oregon Health Authority and was taken offline, one of the larger producing wells out there. In 2000 and remained offline for a while. In 2007, SUB received a permit to withdraw up to 40 cubic feet a second water from the McKenzie River at the Thurston well field and to drill 6 additional wells in or near this field. In 2008, Thurston well number 2 was granted a 2-log natural filtration credit by Oregon Health Authority that helped provide a path to getting it back online. And in 2014, a UV system was constructed and put into service to help treat Thurston number 2 as a surface water source at that site, and was added back into that capacity. And at the same time, a corrosion control facility was constructed at that site also to address the lead and copper issues in the east system. Jump into the north system, and a lot of that Jamie has talked about, and I pulled a lot of this from our records, and a lot of it is through the history that Jamie has already talked about, and then the 92 IGA agreement, 93 was IGA was signed fixing Rainbow's service area. In that agreement, we have a minimum purchase agreement with Rainbow Water District. SUB has an agreement to purchase 2.5 million gallons a day from Rainbow through 10 months of the year, and 5 million gallons a day from Rainbow for 2 months of the year. And that agreement is in effect at present. And I guess the last thing in the north system was just to talk about the Sportsway well that was drilled, and SUB drilled this well in 1995 and put in service in 1995. And this is out in that North Gateway area next to what used to be, or maybe it still is, Royal Caribbean. I think not sure right now, but the Royal Caribbean building out in that area. And so this helped supplement the demand needs in the north system for the SUB customers. And As Jamie mentioned, this source provides water into a system that's intermingled with Rainbow water system. That water travels through Rainbow and water and sub water distribution system piping throughout the north system to provide both of our customers. And for our systems, that is all I had for our systems. And
You had one more slide. You did better than I did.
Questions?
like, so looking at some of Jamie's slides and looking at some of my own, it makes me feel a little bit older. I remember some of these times. I remember that old Datsun pickups in the background.
So Greg, what, and I really don't know, it's a geeky question, but what corrosion control treatment did you guys use for Willamette well field?
That's a good question, and I missed that in my presentation. So the question was, what corrosion control method, treatment method do we use at Willamette Wellfield? And Willamette uses an aeration tower. And so we take all that raw source water, gets pumped up in a tower that drops down over a media section. And ours, if you were to look inside, it looks like a bunch of wiffle balls is what it looks like inside. And that water pours down through there and is aerated before it goes into the filter beds. And it strips off the carbon dioxide before entering the filter bed. So that was a good one. I missed that.
Well, I kind of remember prepping for that in a former life, so I'm happy to hear that. Is it working well?
It works well. Yeah. In service every day.
I have a question. So we pipe water to Glenwood, and you're saying that's the pipe is below the river?
Yeah, it's suspended under the Springfield Glenwood Bridge.
Okay, that's what I thought. So it's connected to the bridge.
Yeah.
And the reason I was just asking, because if I remember right, the EWEB piping was below the river. And I think the river scoured it, and I think it's exposed now or something like that.
I've heard some of them.
That's kind of what I heard. Yeah. Okay. So that's, when I'm driving along the bridge, we don't want those bridges to fill.
That, are we moving right into the next?
Yes.
Okay. This one, do I need to do anything to?
Just a page.
Oh, that's easy. Thank you. So we want to, most people here have heard some talk of SUB constructing a new treatment facility in the east system in the Thurston Wellfield area. So we wanted to share some of that tonight, where we're at with that project, where it's going, and what our plans are there. So I tried to kind of break it down into some key components of that project with planning, design, permitting, construction, and public outreach, and tried to group the outline accordingly. There's a lot going on there, and a lot of people working on it, and so I'll try to capture as much of that as we can. So, and this maybe probably is a little bit hard to see in the back there, but just wanted to kind of give the history a little bit. Starting with 2002 on the top, and I talked about it in the last presentation, SUB obtained the surface water rights for withdrawal on the McKenzie River, and that was a 40 cubic foot per second water right. In 2008, and I'm having a hard time seeing them. In 2008, SUB began planning and constructing several large diameter transmission main projects in anticipation of that plant being constructed and coming online. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in here too. In 2010, SUB purchased a piece of property in that area out there. At the time, it was unknown. It wasn't certain where the treatment plant location would be due to some land use concerns out there with floodplains and wetlands. So that property was secured at that time. In 2016, a study was done to determine what treatment methods would be effective out there. And from that study, membrane filtration was chosen. In a span 2021 and 22, we had 3 different firms do independent site analysis out there to determine the most suitable location for those facilities to be constructed. And in 2000, from that study, it was determined that the most suitable location for the treatment plant would not be on the wellfield site due to floodplain issues, and that the piece of property that SUB had purchased in 2010 would be put to use for that location. In 2022, working our way down through here, another piece of property, there were some footprint constraints on the property that we purchased, potential constraints. It looked like it was going to be tight. A piece of property just to the north of the property we bought in 2010 became available, and SUB purchased that piece of property and secured it for to be able to increase that footprint for the treatment plant construction. And then in 2024, that property, through the land use process, was annexed into the city of Springfield. And in 2024, last year in April, we contracted with Stantec Engineering to begin the design of the treatment plant and the river intake. This is just a real, this gives a real basic overview of where these facilities will be located. So the intake structure is that larger orange shaded area on the McKenzie River. That's the current location of Thurston Wellfield and where the river intake facility will be located. The smaller orange colored one down below, just north of Thurston Road there and next to Thurston Middle School, is the two combined properties where the treatment plant will be constructed. As I mentioned earlier, there was a mention of some large diameter transmission piping projects that SUB's been working on. SUB's been installing large diameter transmission piping across the system in anticipation of this source coming online. SUB recently completed a multi-year 30 to 36 inch transmission line, a project from Thurston Road to South 57th and Daisy Street. And that would be this brighter yellow colored line you can see here, coming from the Thurston Road area over to South 57th and Daisy Street, where we have 2 reservoirs in that location. In late 2002, SUB began the construction of a 24-inch transmission line along the Booth Kelly Road from the steam plant to the South 57th Street location, which is the location where the other section of pipe ended. And that Booth Kelly Road project went through 2015 and was about 25,000 feet of 24-inch pipeline. And that would be the blue line you can see. So the west end of that blue line would be South 5th Street, around the old Booth Kelly Mill and the steam plant building out to 57th Street. And in 2008, SUB also constructed the 24-inch and 48-inch pipelines connecting the well field, which will be the river intake location, to the treatment plant location. And that's shown by the section of green line up there. And as part of the treatment plant, there's a gap. As part of the treatment plant project, this gap will be constructed by the contractor constructing the treatment plant project. So all said, those projects, I don't think I had it on here because I added it late, but the red line on the west end shows the large diameter transmission project work we've done to get water from the west system to the north. And so that would be from the steam plant over to near Kelly Butte and then to Fifth and Moffett intertie, which is really Fifth Street, right where Hamlin Middle School, I guess. I think I'm off at elementary, but yeah, not anymore. So all those projects combined are just under 50,000 feet of pipeline, large diameter pipeline constructed over about 22, 23 years. Talking about the design a little bit, the design was started in 24. We contracted with Stantec Engineering. They've just recently completed the 30% design. We got that report from them just a couple days ago. If we'd had it sooner, I would have maybe had some more of that in this presentation. But it's just hot off the press. Right now, the schedule is to have 60% design by December of this year, with 90% by spring of next year and 100% by fall of next year. Project is being put together in phasing. The proposed intake we're building on the river is being designed for a full build out withdrawal of 40 CFS, which will be put to beneficial use over time, and utilizing subsurface water rights on the McKenzie. The current proposed treatment plant project, the first phase will be sized for 14.6 million gallons of water a day. But it will be designed for a full build out. So the footprint, all the facility, all the structures will be built to add the rest of the treatment equipment into it at a later date when that expansion takes place. The full build out of the treatment plant will provide 23.2 million gallons per day of water. I can convert that back and forth CFS and MGD if I have a calculator, but I struggle doing it in my head. So the new intake structure will replace an existing intake and pump that currently diverts mitigation flow to Cedar Creek. So as part of some of our water rights for wells in the thirsty well field, at present, we're required to provide mitigation in Cedar Creek to offset some of those, the draw from those wells. And what that means is that we pump water from the McKenzie River up a pipeline, up the banks of the McKenzie that spills into Cedar Creek and flows back past the well field on the southern edge of the well field. The new intake structure will be combined with a raw pump station and will consist of an incline, concrete incline screen structures that's set within the riverbank, which will be at this location here. So there'll be a screen structure set back in the riverbank with pumping equipment located at this site that will pump to the treatment plant and will supply mitigation water to Cedar Creek. Raw water will go to the corrosion control facility for the well field and on to the treatment plant. And then the raw water mitigation, I said, will go to Cedar Creek also. We're talking about the treatment process a little bit. So like I said, we're going to have membrane, which is microfiltration at this treatment plant. And so the way that kind of as it flows through that process, what will happen is that water will come in, raw water will come in and go through a flocculation and sedimentation process. So it will have a coagulant added to it. It will help the suspended solids settle out of it before it enters into the membrane system. From there, it'll enter the membrane systems, which is a microfiltration system that removes microorganisms and small suspended solids. From the membrane filtration, it'll go through UV treatment. UV treatment will provide treatment for, will neutralize the microorganisms that are small enough to get through the microfiltration, which things like Giardia and Cryptosporidium. From the UV, it will move on to granular activated carbon GAC filtration. The GAC filtration will handle taste and odor issues and will be there for treatment of cyanotoxins from algae blooms if they occur. And then the finished water, from there we'll go to chlorination, and at this site, we're going to have on-site sodium hypochlorite generation, which is comprised of a salt and water brine solution that goes through an electrolysis process that produces a chlorine gas that's injected into the water for disinfection. What's off the bottom of this slide here?
Erosion control, maybe?
No, that's the camera.
Oh, is that what that is? Okay. So the treatment plant, this is a conceptual image of the treatment plant that we got early in the design. We're at 30% now, and this has changed some. It's not a lot, mainly in the way it's oriented on the property. It's similar in the way that it's laid out. The new design places these buildings. So the property that SUB purchased in 2010 really is this rectangular piece of property right here, this pasture looking area that this plant is sitting on. And the property we purchased in 22 is this property north of it, where some of the rest of this facility is located. So what's changed with the new design is these structures here are located more on the north side of this property. And our goal was to create space between the neighbors, as much space as possible between us and the neighborhood, and orienting it to with a focus on noise containment from any residual noise from the plant. It's a pretty quiet process, but we don't want to add anything to the neighborhood that they don't appreciate. So these buildings we're moving to the north. Some of this reservoir structure facilities and stuff moves to the west. These move a little bit to the east. And entry to the site will come in off of North 66th Street. The property we bought there extends to North 66. It will.
Is that first and middle to the upper left?
It is. And yeah, so this is Thurston Middle School. Over here, the school's here, tennis courts, baseball fields to the west of us.
I guess I'd never thought about the noise, and I'm trying to think, the membrane plants that I visited, Bend and the one on the coast. I'm not sure about Cottage Grove, but they're all pretty isolated. I can't think of, the noises in the buildings. It is noisy, the water flowing
Right.
through and things like that. So, but we're not anticipating.
The noises that are in the buildings actually are easier to contain than some of the external. Some of the concerns for the external noises are HVAC, exhaust fans, our backup power generation. This generator will be exercised regularly, just like the rest of ours are on a regular schedule. This one has the generator right here. Our new design has a generator more up in this area on the opposite side of the buildings from the neighborhood, those types of things, and making sure that any of our air handling equipment, HVAC equipment and stuff is positioned where it has exhaust away from neighbors in a direction away from the neighborhoods, those types of things. The pump rooms and stuff are, because those are enclosed within the facility and you can design sound deadening into those types of structures, we're more confident about handling that type of noise attenuation.
So I know that we have an active, if there's a crisis, working with E-Web and putting out booms and everything like that. But if there's a chemical or a gas or a diesel spill on the McKenzie, can this system handle any of that type of stuff, or do we have to shut down things?
That's a pretty broad question.
Yes.
But, yeah, not knowing what kind of contaminations we'd be facing.
You're telling me.
Yeah, and so our standard procedure in those types of spills is to shut our raw water intakes off, and we've experienced that at times on the Middle Fork. I mean, different things that happen on the Middle Fork upstream of us, and until we can do some sampling and assess the situation and determine whether the raw water is safe to start back through the plant.
And I guess one other thing too is, as opposed to the Middle Fork, this will be able to handle algae blooms, whereas I don't believe that can handle algae blooms. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, it's a different process, and the Middle Fork plant doesn't have granular activated carbon, and so it's has less ability to handle algae blooms. So as you look at this process, I was talking about the process a little bit. These are the sedimentation basins where the water would come in and the solids would settle out. It would enter the building where the membrane filtration racks are located and the chemical injection pumps. It would, there will be another building added to this that will have the granular activated carbon treatment in it and the sodium hypochlorite system located in it too. But it'll go through granular activated carbon, and then it will go to these two storage tanks for contact time for the chlorine and for supplemental storage before it goes into the system.
All right, I have a question. The recycled water for the mitigation of Cedar Creek that you have right now, the demand for that, will it increase for any reason when the new treatment plant is built?
It won't. It'll stay.
I didn't think that it would, but I wasn't going to think that you were by somehow consuming any more to increase the need for more mitigation. That's true, right?
We're not increasing it. That water right requirement is strictly for the 3 wells that we have groundwater permits in that well field.
I didn't think you were taking any more.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Well, in terms of cost and budget, when we started this process, the early cost estimates on this project are estimated to be somewhere in the 95 to 100 million dollars to construct this project. SUB is currently exploring funding opportunities through several state and federal grant and forgivable loan programs. SUB board did approve a rate schedule last year to make some adjustments over the next 6-7 years to help offset those costs as well. As we get more into this design process, further along in this process, that those cost estimates will be able to get a more accurate idea of what those are going to be. We're entering into, with this project, we're bringing a CMGC, a construction manager, general contractor on board, and that process brings a contractor in. So as opposed to a design bid build process where you would have an engineering firm designing your facility or your project to 100%, and then you would put it out to bid. Then you would receive bids from your contractors and make a decision on picking who you're going to award the project to. With CMGC, you bring a contractor in early in the design process, and the thought is that they provide construction expertise and technical expertise along the way to help with the design process and any value engineering that could be added on early in the process. And that's what we're working with. And one other benefit of that is to achieve earlier cost certainty in your project as you get into that design process further. So we're hoping to have more cost certainty closer in our 60% design before we get to 90 and 100%. Going through a lot of permitting work right now. A lot of people working on a team from Stantec along with a team from SUB is working on this. In addition to all the local building and land use permitting, as you can imagine, through the city and county, the project requires permits from several state and federal agencies, and the list is long, and we're working through those processes right now. We're hoping to have those permit applications submitted in April of this year, and the review duration on those is estimated to be 18 to 24 months on those. So hoping to get those in soon and get that process underway. Environmental assessments. The environmental consultants on the project team are finalizing several environmental studies. We're having fish habitat availability study done to model the changes in the river depth that affects fish habitat. A thermal impacts analysis to determine impacts to the river water temperature. And a biological assessment to identify impacts to the protected species. And all that work is currently happening. These analysis will be incorporated into the environmental permit applications and used to determine the required mitigation projects that will be undertaken to address these impacts. So as I said, we're currently in the process of procuring the CMGC contractor will help provide cost and constructability input during the remainder of the design process. Construction is anticipated to start in late 26 or early 27 once the environmental permits are obtained. And the current construction duration is estimated to be approximately 30 months. And both projects, both sites will be constructed simultaneously, the river intake and the the treatment plant facility. Part of this process going in is public outreach and will be throughout the project. The project will be located within an existing developed residential neighborhood and adjacent to Thurston Middle School. Maintaining positive relationships with these neighbors and providing timely and meaningful project information to the community is an important goal for our project team. The communications team consisting of SUB Water's project team, SUB's public communications staff, and public communications specialists from the consultant team have been assembled for the project. Communications team have developed and are developing a communication plan, which it's being continually updated as it progresses and will be throughout the process. We're keeping a contact log that's being maintained to track questions that we're receiving from neighbors and community members to make sure and ensure that we're following up on these as they come in and as more information becomes available to us. So nobody's left waiting, wondering what's happening. There's a lot more, there's information available on our website with the project that's being regularly updated. And as the project moves forward, that people can go to also to get information on the project. And that's, I did have one more right there.
Eric, I got a question.
Yeah.
You were around when the slow sand plant was constructed, correct?
Right.
How much different was that process then than this process has been?
I was in a way different role at that time. I was in operations and working in the field more, so I wasn't in on the design and the planning and design part of it, but I remember it being much less complicated than what we're seeing today. And so, that was prior to corrosion control. That was prior to, PFAS, cyanotoxins, yeah, you name it. I mean, there's lots changed. That plant was constructed in 2001 and I think went online in 2002, and a lot's changed since then. Jeff. Doug.
Well, great presentation, but even better, I mean, this is going to be such an asset for Springfield. And we only have to look across I-5, right, to see, excuse me, our neighbor eWeb, how much they stress over having a single source, right? But SUB, multiple wells, withdraw water from two really pristine rivers. And I'm sure when you go to a conference and you tell them about the McKenzie, I mean, there's a lot of communities that would kill to have a source water like that. I think we take that for granted around here, but that is one pure water source. So it's pretty exciting, really.
Yeah, and that is true. We run into that pretty much everywhere. We tour other plants and other facilities around, and if you say you're getting water off the McKenzie River, people are jealous of that. They envy that type of source. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The finished water, where is that entering the system and who are the first customers that are going to drink it? Because I live in Thurston, so I'm wondering if I'm going to be getting this water at my house or if it's entering the system somewhere else.
Yeah, it'll be right at the middle school. So I could go back to that slide. That pipeline alignment that I said the contractor would be finishing when they do the project. We have an easement space along the east edge of Thurston Middle School property, the school district property there. And that pipeline will follow that edge of that property south, enter the treatment plant at the 65th Street location, come back in and go to Thurston Road, and that will be the entry point into the distribution system.
Both ways on
And
Thurston
it'll
Road?
go both ways on Thurston Road.
First tap.
Our grandson bought a house right there where the well fields or the water treatment plant's going to be. He bought it a year ago. And he was so excited because he wasn't gonna have any neighbors behind him. But
So I have one.
anyway, he thought that that belonged to the city or to the school district. And I had not a clue. And then he started hearing some things and he just said, well, at least I'll have good security.
So we hear that a lot from the neighbors, and I understand that us moving in, a big construction project, this big facility, we are a quiet neighbor. We're a very quiet neighbor, and we value neighbor relations a lot. As you can imagine, our well fields, reservoirs, a lot of our pump stations are located in areas that are in the outskirts and not necessarily in densely populated residential areas. So they do become an attraction for vandalism and theft and different things like that too. And so we do really appreciate, security is important to us and a high priority, and we really appreciate good neighbors. And we try to respect that. And a lot of times those neighbors act as almost like an added security system at those sites. I've learned that over the years working with a lot of the people that live around those places. And we just try to have that mutual relationship back and forth and honor their privacy and security. And so this project has is part of the land use and the annexation agreement of the city. This project will have a pedestrian path that connects 66th Street to the middle school property. It will be a lighted, secured path. We're going through a lot right now because we have heard from the neighbors already about lighting and security. And so we're working really hard to try to get that right as we can, and working in ways that we could provide security lighting for the path and for pedestrians and kids, but not that it spills over onto the neighbors and it's intrusive to the neighbors. And so we're having those talks in our design processes, make sure that light pours the right direction.
So two things. So when I came into this role as general manager, I learned from prior general managers and staff, and SUB's path had been to look at adding capacity with adding wells that we have the ability to permit, but that had a couple of complications that we discovered over time. One, it was sucking on a similar aquifer, like bringing online another well at the Thurston well field. The other thing that was happening, we were just seeing the emerging alphabet soup of treatment requirements for wells, and the incremental cost for treatment for a well relative to a larger treatment facility, just the economies of scale tilted from wells are great to, hey, maybe surface water intakes up from a river make the most sense from a longer term perspective. So that was my evolution from wells are the way to go to needing to diversify more on the wells and on the surface water. Also with the intakes, and we haven't really talked about it, we could talk about it more with regards to water rights. But in a nutshell, we have permits to draw water on some locations, and some locations SUB has perfected water rights. We have a permit for the surface water intake, which has a specific point of diversion on the McKenzie that has a deadline. And over time, what I've seen is that the state has clamped down on water permits. So if you do not take steps to demonstrate that you're actively using that water, they will take that right away from you. So what is driving our process and the need to build this McKenzie surface water treatment plant that's taking water from the river is that water permit, which then we need to show that we're using so that we can perfect that water right so we don't lose it for future generations of Springfield. So this is generational investment. So these conversations, we've talked to EWEB because EWEB has a point of diversion on the McKenzie downstream. And we looked at having a relationship with them with regards to using their resource and finding a way to collaborate. What we found though was that if you move a water right downstream, that's easy. It's very difficult to move it back up. So that is one of the factors that when we looked at it to continue to move forward with our treatment facility as planned. And as Greg outlined too, as we're mapping out these cornerstones of infrastructure, it's taking decades to get all the pieces in place. So if we pivoted to buying water from EWEB using our water right on the McKenzie, it would have still taken us quite a bit of time to build out new water transmission mains to deliver water to our system where we needed it delivered. And we probably would have missed our deadline to our milestone with working on getting our water right perfected. We also have a water right, surface water right on the Willamette. And so we do have an intake and we draw water from the Willamette River. So folks had thought that we just had wells at the Willamette. And so we have a surface water right at the Willamette. And we had talked to EWEB about collaborating with them on their Willamette water right as well. Same thing, their water right was downriver, their point of diversion, ours was where it is right now. If we moved ours downriver, then we couldn't bring it back up very easily. Plus, there were entanglements with our surface water right and the balance of the recharge rights and these other rights that are associated with some of these water rights. So moving that right downriver and then jointly building a treatment facility with EWEB was looked at, but it just became problematic from a number of water rights perspectives. I just wanted to highlight the water right element because that ultimately was a significant driver in terms of the timelines that we were marching towards in the next 3 years, kind of hitting that significant milestone. I don't know if you want to add anything or clarify anything, Greg.
Oh, you hit it. It's water rights were definitely a consideration, and like you said, moving them downstream, they're hard to move back up, and it also changes your priority with your water right also in terms of who's senior and who's junior, and it puts your water rights at risk, at a different level of risk when that happens too. So that was an important factor.
Your crystal ball is probably no better than mine as far as that construction schedule. If environmental permitting does linger and then 30 months. So I mean, it looks like there's the potential that construction goes into 29. And that's when PFAS treatment systems need to be online. And so it could be a couple stressful summers. So we might need to have the mandatory curtailment messaging ready to go just in case, you know. Yeah. Something to worry about.
To end on a good note. No, that is true.
No, I mean, we stress about
It's
that.
a reality. It's a reality. Yeah.
Because we know that you're taking over the burden of the bulk of the water source. And so we're at this transition point where, you know, we have some things breaking down and how much do we spend on it? Yeah.
Greg, how do you incorporate climate change into your delta T calculations for water temperature? I mean, I've done it in the past in a different life, but that was before climate change even had any kind of consideration, and you could use shade and you could use your other issues. But you have to take all that, I'm assuming, and apply a factor to it that somehow now you may be required to mitigate for, that unfortunately is a little bit more of an indirect cause. Is that true?
It is. I mean, I can't explain it.
No, that's-
It's way above my head, but part of our Stantec team and people and team from DEQ and that group is working through that process right now and trying to evaluate what that's gonna look like, what our mitigation requirements will be.
But it will definitely include a factor for that.
Yes.
That's why I went to land use, the simple part.
They get into that just boggles my mind when they start talking about that, the effects you have on the thermal impacts you have on the river flows. And they start talking about fractions of percentages of degrees, miles downstream and all that. And I just have to trust that those people are experts at what they do. I mean, our team is fighting or working hard to make sure that that's clearly understood what our mitigation requirements are. And there's a lot at the DEQ level right now that's drawing a lot of attention by people constructing projects like this on rivers. We're not the only ones. Yeah.
In case of a really like 2 or 3 years of a severe drought, would they ever limit your intake? Or your intake from the river? Could they?
I'm not aware of that. I mean, you're go ahead. Yeah.
So that did happen. There was an exercise that happened, I want to say it was 2017, where the state was going to start to limit water rights for folks that had permits, but not protected water rights. So, for example, Knife River was asking if we had any water available that they could temporarily, we could temporarily assign water rights to, because they were going to get curtailed, and that would have impacted their operations. I want to say it was 17, around there.
I remember the Knife River thing. I don't.
So ultimately, the crisis passed, but it didn't quite happen, but it was very close. And they were gonna, allocate the water rights on the river to address the low flows.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So according to the agenda, we still have questions and answers. We've been asking questions and we're going through, but as board members, what questions would you like to ask now that you have all these experts here and knowledgeable people and you doing that?
I'm distracting you. No.
So is there anything that anybody would like to bring up or talk about in terms of questions and answers? Okay, if not, Doug and I just talked briefly, but you get into the discuss next steps for future meetings. And, this is such a different meeting from last year. And like Doug pointed out, I think all of us were pretty apprehensive coming in. Again, I want to compliment Rainbow and Doug for facilitating the presentation. It really launched us into the discussions. I want to appreciate John and Doug and, working on. We've already decided most of those discussions are had in executive session, and so, but the boards are keeping up. But, we originally talked about having something like this every 6 months. This has actually worked out pretty well. Annual hasn't been bad. I mean, this is good. It's good for us to get together and to see each other. The work that's being done in the committee is, like about 30 of these meetings, if not more. So let's just throw it out to you folks in terms of any of your thoughts or anything on your minds at all in terms of the future and what you want us to do.
Well, I've got one, and actually I want to build on to what you said and recognize John for his role. We're having these IGA discussions, of course, but he came to me last fall and asked a question, you know, what can we do to kind of help facilitate that process? Because it has been a number of years. And I really didn't have a good answer for him, but he had brought one because he's smart. And he suggested that maybe if he and I kind of met with staff when they do their routine monthly meetings on the IGA progress and process, that might be helpful. And it really has been, so thank you. What it does for me is kind of gives me a voice, you know, for my peers on our board, as well as it gives me another chance to voice back what I hear and learn. So I thought that was a good thing for us to take on, and I'm appreciative, so thank you.
Let me say I very much appreciate how well you received that idea. And I appreciate, it's been a pleasure really working with the team from Rainbow on this IGA. So look forward to continuing to do it.
Not forever, though.
I was gonna say, until September.
So is there anything from the boards that you want to bring up that we've missed or that, you know, you want to focus on? Or again, Lou, we're grateful to you for allowing us to be able to come here. This has been a great venue.
You're welcome. It's a good room, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's too convenient. I do think maybe if we could look at scheduling so that we're not always teetering right on the precipice of an ice event. Maybe though, I think, because we're setting a standard here. I don't know if we want to do that going forward. Let's pick a blue sky day.
We could vacation somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, have a,
Cabo.
yeah, yeah.
Next meeting's in Cabo. No, you're very welcome. I'm just glad it was available. It's a great room. It's beyond convenient. I mean, that just eclipses everything. So, yeah, you're welcome.
So since you kind of go ahead. Mindy.
Once the building's all up and everything's running, can we get a tour, private tour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, Meredith, that was something the tours and educating the public and having them come out. Someone else brought that up too, but I told them to send me an email and I would forward it to you. And you're right, that's a critical thing, because these really are fascinating things. You know, you kind of go in and like, well, that's really cool. Don't understand it, but that's really neat.
It's part of it's in the scope of work for our design consultants to incorporate into the plan some
Educational
things and facilities to accommodate those types of things and groups.
And so would that be, can we do that before it's built? I mean, you know, in terms of the neighborhood, to let them know where things are going to be at, what's going to be happening. So
I think we'll be working with our team to find ways to do that as we get into the project and as the progress is progressing. And I think Meredith is going to be, for SUB is going to be helping us navigate that with our team, design team.
So
Lucy Meredith joined us later, but we're glad you're here too.
yeah. Since you brought up the timing of the meeting, Lou, do you have any suggestion? Because we could actually kind of tentatively schedule something now for next year.
You know, just stay away from the cold, crazy weather.
So maybe look more to February. Well, wait a minute, we're in February. Last year we tried January. That worked out really well.
The hair of my chinny chin chin, it worked out well.
So maybe March, April might be.
I was thinking of floating something like that, depending on how the group felt about it.
And you know, it did seem to work out pretty good. When do you have your board meeting?
We're the second Wednesday, same as you.
Oh, okay. That's right. Wait. That's where we had to kind of set up the things. So the day before the board meeting is actually not a bad time because we are usually in town.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. So let's put that down. And we'll follow up on that.
Maybe we could
We-
do
we-
some internal polling and.
Yeah,
make
yeah.
sure that-
And then again, as we're going through, we'll kind of figure out what we want to talk about. So the program tonight was obviously to bring the whole Rainbow Board up to speed, which also was good for us in terms of the water treatment plan. Then also the overview, because there's always new board members and so. Anything else that?
No, sir. Good.
Jeff?
Chair, yes, who's gonna host next time?
Oh, that's a good question.
Can we find a third party to do it for?
City of Springfield,
Lane County.
Lake County. We'll sort that out.
Alternate.
Yeah,
It could be our turn,
so
yeah.
this, you did it last year, we did it this year, and then you do it next year.
We'll take the even number of years.
Okay.
Any objections about this room, this location? I mean, I'll try to get on the docket as
Okay.
we can. This is a very busy facility. It doesn't look like it right at the moment, but more and more people over the years in the community have found out about this. And they're filling up fast. Plus, not to mention, the police department uses it once in a while too. So, for their training. So.
You know, a tentative date, and it would be before, spring break would actually be March 10th, because March 11th is when you would be having the board meetings. So if you want, let's kind of put that down as a tentative. Rainbow will be, sharing and then,
This coming March or next March?
20, yeah.
Just want to be sure. 26. Oh, can't believe I'm saying
5:30 again? Yeah, so did that work out pretty good in terms of the 5:30 start time, come in, start the meeting, then break for dinner, and then get into it at 6 o'clock and be done by 8.
One of the things, start talking about the education part. I'm pointing at Greg, but he's not looking. I'll tap into my old Navy submarine days, and Jamie's gonna know this, one of the arduous qualification periods in a submarine sailor's life takes about a year. And, remember those questions? I'm a molecule of water. Bring me into the submarine, clean me, treat me, move me from the front end of the submarine to the back end, and then, brush your teeth with it and then flush it down the toilet. Where does it go? I'm not getting that complicated, but in a sense of water source where people get their water from, and I'm looking at Doug because he's on the MWMC commission, which I work for. We do this at the treatment plant. This is what happens when you flush your toilet. This is where the water goes, and this is what happens to it, and this is how we clean it. This is how we treat it. This is how we dump it back into the river. Something like that, I think, would go a long way. This is the water, where the water comes from. This is what we do with it, and I'm tying this in. I really am. I'm not trying to do that. What do you call it? A weave. I'm tying this together. Is that there's backup systems here. And we're all sitting in this room. We're partners. Should something catastrophically happen to sub, what's that old Randy Nelson song? You got a friend in me, right? You got a friend in Rainbow. We help out, and because of the interties, that's where I'm going. And I talk to my neighbors a lot. They don't understand that our system is built like that. God forbid something happens, we have means to make sure we are supporting each other, both systems, right? Both organizations. You're gonna still have water at your tap. But people don't understand it. That's at least my experience. And my neighbors in the last 15 years have become much more educated in where their water comes from and how it gets treated and things of that nature. And because I talk about it all the time. So I think when you're talking education for the public, I think incorporating that in there, maybe not necessarily here's the drop of water from McKenzie, and here's what it goes through to get to your tap. Because then you could tie it into the presentation MWMC does, is when you're done with your tap and you flush it, then it goes back to the river. So, but just understanding that the systems are designed this way, and you've got backups. People don't understand it. But boy, the phones are gonna ring off the hook when their toilets don't flush. We know that at MWMC. But it's just something else to think about in the community. And I just have an overwhelming feeling that our citizenry doesn't understand how our systems are designed and laid out and the interties and the backups to the backups and the partnerships between the organizations and how we help each other. It's something that when you get to that point in the education part, I think that should be always factored in. Anything to elevate the education of the citizens. Once they understand how complicated our water systems are, those rate increases may not be so hard to swallow, because they understand how complicated the systems are.
That's true. So I'll be thinking about that, but then we have a year and a month or so to plan. Anything else from the board? Okay, it is 7:44 and the Springfield Utility Board is concluded.
As is Rainbow.